The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye where the digital...
It's Wednesday, August 1st, Thursday, August 2nd, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North, on top of the thunder and lightning mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio, and we say hello to all of you tonight. If you want to take in our archives, they are free at our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe to the channel today. We're hoping, after last night we got knocked out by a storm, guess what? We are blessed with another one here. Another one. I'm watching the lightning outside headquarters windows. Oh, that was a good one. That was a good bolt right there. Hopefully it doesn't start any more fires around here. We really don't need that. Don't need it at all. Hopefully tonight, with the thunderstorms hanging out, we can rock a good show and they don't knock us off the air. So I'm giving you all the warning early that if all of a sudden our signal goes bye-bye, knock on wood that it will not, you know why. Mother Nature is being very, very cruel right now. The dark clouds have rolled in, and we can blame her, not some alphabet group. Not tonight. We could keep the tinfoil away. Tonight, we are heading into one of the most eastern quarters of the United States, where Maryland has a rich history in the creation of the United States. One of the original 13 colonies, Maryland is considered the birthplace of religious freedoms in America. And tonight, investigators Rainne and Cody Giffin join us to discuss the ghosts and the other strange creatures that tend to roam around the old line state. Creators of the Double Saints Paranormal Research Society, both October and Cody, bring a plethora of experience and stories to share with us tonight. Then in the bottom of hour number 3, we have Everett Themer coming back from the encounter, and he takes part from our SOR newsroom. We're going to get into a little bit of Art Bell and the autopsy that came out tonight. But first, we bring in Rainne Cody Giffin from Double Saints Paranormal Research Society. October, Cody, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it. I'm gonna bump up your levels a little bit because you're a little low on my end. But nonetheless, thank you so much for joining us tonight and talking to us about the ghosts of Maryland, because Maryland, with its rich history being one of the 13 colonies, has to have a lot of ghosts walking around. And we will get into that later on tonight. But first, I want to find out a little bit more about you, introduce you to our audience. October, how did you get involved in the paranormal scene?
Okay, I got involved because pretty much most of my life I've lived in the same house, and I'm actually back living in the same house, where we had a house that always had activity. It's actually formerly my grandparents' house that Cody and I have now moved into. But as a child, I had to be about 8 years old when I had my first kind of ghost encounter. And I had a sleepover with a little girl named Jamie. We were on the upstairs living room floor, which was just carpet. And we made like those little kind of like fake beds out of like pillows and blankets like kids do. We were just camping out in the living room. Well, my grandparents at the time had gone to bed, and it got really late. Like we were staying up, giggling, doing all that normal kid stuff. And then eventually I just turned to like look down the hallway while we were laying there, because it's positioned so that in this house, the upstairs living room is directly across from a super long hallway in which all the other rooms of the house are down that hallway. And usually there's no room at the end of the hallway. It's just on the right and left of it. But down in the center where the walkway of the hallway was a really old kind of man, probably about 60s to 70s, really like white and gray. But he was wearing, I thought at the time he was wearing pajamas because it was striped. And he was also holding a lantern. But now that I'm older, I realize I think he was like a train either conductor or one of the workers, because they used to wear stripes back then. And they had those lights that either told the train that it was on the tracks or not, or if it was safe. So I think that was the first ghost in this house that I saw. And then I've seen quite a few more over the years, and it's gotten to where we have activity upstairs and downstairs almost 24/7 here, which is pretty much kind of great because as a researcher, you get to mark everything down. We keep a log of what happens in the house. But that's pretty much what got me into it, because it wasn't my grandfather, because it looked nothing like him, and he wasn't that old at the time. And everybody else in the house was asleep. It was just my grandparents and me and my little friend. And she saw it too. And we were just like, who is that? And we did that thing where when you see something and you don't want it to kind of come after you, and you kind of like pull the covers over and you pretend you're asleep. So we just did that. And then we eventually, I guess, kind of creeped and looked back, and he was just gone, just completely gone. He didn't even walk or anything. He just stood at the hallway.
Not even a hello. Very rude. Very rude. Not even a hello.
These days, I'm not too scared of him. So these days, we actually talk to him. But back then, I was just like, no, I'm going to roll over and close my eyes and hope for the best.
No kidding. I don't blame you. In your childhood house, I mean, how old were you when this started? Because, I mean, let's face it, we all seem to have that one experience that draws us into this field. Was this the turning point for you that you kind of had to investigate as you grew up what was going on? Or was this something that, you know, when you became an adult, you figured, you know what, I need to go back to this?
I went through, in my teens, I feel like I did more kind of like paranormal researching, like I got really interested, and then I had stopped, but now I'm in kind of my late 20s, I'm picking it back up again. There was a long period where I kind of was scared to do it because I was pretty much by myself, and I was like, well, I shouldn't go looking for things if I'm scared of what I might find. And then now that I'm more mature and understand more of it and have seen more, I'm definitely interested in finding out as much as possible through researching or just marking activity and using all the tools. So these days I go looking for them, and the old days they just kind of showed up and found me, I guess.
Would you consider yourself a little bit intuitive, or that you've grown intuitive because of these experiences, October?
Oh, yeah. I definitely think that, yeah, I feel like, I don't know if I attract them or, I don't know. I just feel like they kind of, I draw like kids in, I draw animals in. I think the energy I radiate kind of helps them be drawn into me. And now I just want to know like who they are, what they are, and what they're capable of, and if we can get intelligent responses and stuff.
Let's move on to Cody here. Cody, welcome to the show. And of course, you are not only the partner, but boyfriend of October as well. Lucky guy you are. Let me ask you, did you believe in the paranormal before you met this young lady, or was this something that you've always been open to as well?
Well, I believed in the paranormal, before I met her. During my childhood, I actually, in my life, I had two events that would turn me toward the paranormal path. The first event was in my childhood, probably when I was around 5 or 6 years old. My brother and I, we shared the same room, and he had a bed closest to the farthest wall, and I had a bed right under the window. We would see these two red eyes that would pop up in the window late at night for probably a summer or two, and they would just scare us to death, and we'd go run to our parents and tell them what we saw. And being a parent, not knowing what your child saw, they would just kind of, you didn't see anything, and put us back to bed. And that carried on for a while. And the second event that I had was, I actually remember the date. It was March 23rd, 2013. This was what gravitated me towards the paranormal field. We had some activity before then, and then I just wanted to see what was there. So that day, I took an audio recorder and put it on a table. Everybody else was at work, but my parents and I, we went to go to get me a new cell phone at the time because I just graduated high school and I broke mine. And we were out probably for the most of the night. And then when we got back, I immediately went to the recorder. And about 1 minute and 13 seconds in, there was a voice that would say that we ended up boosting, and it said, "Look, I'm alive." And then there was a growl afterwards. And I had 2 dogs in the house at the time, but it was not a growl that they would make. It almost sounded inhuman or non-animalistic. And then my dogs would actually respond to that growl, and they would whimper on the tape. So that's what turned me into the paranormal community.
It is such an incredible field, especially on the East Coast, where there is so much activity due to the rich history of the United States being birthed in, Massachusetts, there in Provincetown, where the Pilgrims first landed, and spread out from there. I mean, it's been, we're talking almost 600 years of ghostly footprints all over the land. And that's just from the Europeans who came over. So, October, I want to ask you, when you go around to these areas, especially where you are, how haunted is it over there in Maryland?
I think we have quite a bit of activity because not only the history, but there's also, you have land where Native Americans used to be and burial plots from them. Then you have tons and tons of water where they used to bring vessels over for several different battles and, I guess, settlers and stuff. And then you have like a lot of old plantation farms and houses that are still standing that are kind of more like museum type places now. So I think there's quite a bit here because there's so much and like a vast variety of people.
And do you find, October, that when you are going to these places, are the people of Maryland quite understanding that it is a paranormal state, that there are a lot of ghosts going around, walking around, and a lot of places haunted, or are they quite naive to the fact?
I think until you've had your own kind of experience, there's some people who believe regardless, but a lot of people need to have their own encounter in order to believe, I feel like. But a lot of the people, obviously, that we take on residentially that just go in when we go into their home, they all seem to pretty much already believe in it. So at least for the most part, I think they believe, but sometimes they just want reassurance that you're not crazy and other people believe. But I guess there's always going to be skeptics out there.
Cody, how about for you? Do you find that a lot of people in your circle are quite adept in understanding that this is a very haunted area?
Now, in my circle, for the most part, they are paranormal researchers, so they will tell you that Maryland does have a lot of activity, specifically down St. Mary's Way, down Leonardtown Way, where the original legends were formed, St. Clement's Island, Newtown Neck, Fort McHenry is up there. Baltimore is very haunted. Parts of D.C., up in Frederick County. A lot of people will tell you those kind of gravitate more towards the paranormal bit of Maryland. But then you do get your general conceptions of some people that are skeptical about it. It's about 50-50. The people that live around there, they're more open to it. But if you ask somebody that, I don't know, for instance, lived in more northern part of Maryland, like not Montgomery County or so, they would say maybe there's not a ghost around. It's all location.
True that. And let's not forget, too, that, over the last 20 years, Baltimore and that area has developed quite a reputation of being one of the more violent cities in the United States. And you've got to think with that negativity around, that has to bring up the energies of the paranormal quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine it does, especially in, like, the city areas. But there's also tons of giant cemeteries up there, too, that a lot of people don't realize. Right in the middle of Baltimore, it's kind of not really, like, fenced off, but they've built a wall around them. There's giant cemeteries from, 1800s and beyond?
Well, some of our founding fathers are in there, the lesser-known founding fathers.
No
Cody
kidding.
says there's family fathers in there. I didn't realize that.
There's some of them, like some of the Keys are up there.
Okay, like the Key family from Francis Scott Key.
There's a few other ones. I can't think of the names right off, but we actually were just there recently, within a few months ago.
We did Greenmount Cemetery. That has a lot. But I will say our biggest issue is we find people will believe more in ghosts and aliens, kind of more upfront, or flat out. But the Bigfoots and the cryptids, nobody wants to believe in those in our circle or people like online unless you've literally had your own encounter.
Oh, we will definitely get into your encounter with Bigfoot later on in the show because we got a lot of cryptid fans in here. And I got to tell you, being from British Columbia here, I mean, it's just not a night when we can't slip in a Bigfoot story. We're right in the middle of Bigfoot country right here. Doesn't get any more Bigfoot than where we are right now.
That's true.
This is very, very true. So I want to ask both of you guys, in regards to paranormal investigation, there is always so many different ways that people are doing it these days. How would you describe, Cody, your investigative techniques?
My investigative techniques, I try to use the scientific method for it. We try to propose a theory and try and either disprove or prove it, and we go about that. And we'll investigate a normal place using those theories. But as for like technique-wise, we'll pretty much bring a bunch of equipment like video cameras, audio recorders, EMF detectors, and just spirit boxes, a few of those equipment, and we'll set up 2 or 3 people inside one building, depending on the size, and we'll spend 8 hours there, and we'll go about asking questions. It depends on if it's a historical site. We'll try and see if there's any historical figures there, ask questions that are time period-wise or stuff, and then just ask general questions. And then after that, we'll review the tapes and the recordings, and we'll just go from there.
Is there in Maryland that big debate, Cody, going on that there is around a lot of the paranormal investigators around Canada and the United States, where there is a huge debate on how techniques should be done? What should we be able to solve? Is that there too, and how do you deal with that if it is?
It is definitely here in the paranormal community, and I feel wherever you go. The way I would deal with it is it's a pseudoscience. Everybody's doing it the way they're doing it. And there should be, right now, there's actually no right way to do a paranormal investigation, I feel. Everybody's
quiet.
I mean, there's being quiet and going about and actually searching for it and debunking debunking experiences before you call them a ghost. You should never be quick to call them a paranormal incident. You should always try and debunk it first. But everybody's doing it differently, and sometimes you learn a different technique that you actually like, and then sometimes you meet with other investigators and you just don't like anything they're doing. But that's just his life.
October, I want to get your opinion on that, because there are such different techniques. What do you try and follow on a personal level? Because if you are more intuitive with the way things are going, do you try and, blend technology with your intuition, or do you try and segregate the two?
I feel like I tend to bring more of the old school investigating techniques, and Cody was very new school, had all these cool gadgets and stuff. So he brings the new era of stuff, which has all those cool things like the spirit boxes or Rodavay diode, those RIN pods, stuff like that, and thermal cams, all those kind of really cool stuff. Whereas I just was back in the day, I literally had a karaoke machine with a cassette tape I would set up and get EVPs on, because I was little and had no idea what I was doing back then. But I feel just a good tape recorder and a trigger object and a good video camera with either infrared or full spectrum and infrared. So anything like that, you can still get good results with it. But we also need tools to debunk that it's not just wind, or it's not just a glare or a light from the camera or a window or a shadow or anything like that.
No, and I understand that. I mean, you have to have a sense of skepticism with absolutely everything in this field, because you never know who's just trying to pull your leg and who's not. And sometimes there are some very simple answers, October, for some very, very hard questions. And that's just the way the paranormal field is. But do you try and educate yourself every time you go out there, because everything is new? Or do you have people whom you can rely on to bounce questions off of?
Well, I guess inside of our little team, we don't have very many people, but between groups on Facebook and our personal Double Saints team, we usually just start a group chat, and we'll throw kind of questions out there. But I mean, even within our group, we have different beliefs about things all the time. But
so how does that affect what you guys do on a nightly basis, though? Do you find that
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of go in where I listen to somebody, and for the most part, I'll believe them as long as there's not really, really striking red flags of maybe this person is kind of fabricating or enhancing things or doing things that aren't truthful. We always go in kind of where we believe that the possibility that everything they've told us is true, but we still go in as kind of a skeptic, and until we prove or find our own evidence that there is activity. And since a lot of the times it's new stuff where you might get conversation that you've never heard or get activity that's never happened before, like even in our house, the activity changes where we've never had anything pluck on my lights in my bedroom, which are coffee house lights, those little glass domes. I've never, ever, being here almost all of my life besides moving off and on, had anything pluck on those. And now we have activity that does that. So everywhere we go, we're learning and we're taking into account what they're able to do or not able to do, or hopefully to figure out who's doing it too. Sometimes we don't even get to figure that part out.
It is a mystery every time you go into an investigation, because even if you go to the same location, Cody, it's different every time. Some days you may have a ton of, experiences that you can't explain, and other days it's dead, like there's not a darn thing around, and I say that pun intended. So do you find that even though you may go to repeat locations, that it's the experience that you are having that is well worth the time and effort of going back to try and solve the mysteries?
It is. For me, I'm a very curious person, so even if I don't get anything that happens that one night, and say we've already been there before, and we had everything bouncing off the walls, EVPs out the wazoo, and it's dead. For me, that makes me want to go back and be questioned and saying, why was it dead? Was nothing active, or did something happen? So, to me, it's very exciting either way. It does suck when you have nothing happen and you have 8 hours of audio footage, files to go through, and you're just listening to static noise. And then you figure out that it was all audio.
So with your paranormal team, then, are you guys just a team that goes and investigates on your own, Cody, or are you guys a team that will take on personal residences to try and cleanse somebody who is having problems with the spiritual world?
We are a mixture of both. We will find a place, say a certain, in Pennsylvania, there's some certain mansions. I don't really want to say their name because I'm not clear to say it, but you could book reservations and investigate a night there, or other places are like that too. But then we do have people that contact our Facebook page or hit us up through our email and do want a client investigation. And just a lot of them want to see if they're crazy or if it's actually something there. And I don't believe that they're crazy. So,
yeah, I mean, you can't knock people for their experiences of what they have or haven't. Just because you guys arrive and find nothing doesn't mean that it's not there, is it, Cody?
Definitely. And we will tell the client if we find something that, if we show up and do an investigation and there's nothing there, we'll inform the client. Sometimes we just show up on a bad night. And if we'll tell them if something happens and it starts picking up, call us back. We'll come back and repeat and see if we can catch anything.
Now, for you, October, when you go into these situations, do you prefer the regular investigation where you're going out doing your own thing, or do you prefer to help people with their spiritual problems?
I like the residential side because I feel like that way you're helping an actual person and you're validating their claims, which I feel like that's also equally important to me besides getting information and learning from the experience. I want people to not feel crazy and to know that they're not alone, that this does happen, and especially if they have children or animals reacting to it as well. I mean, it just puts them at ease, especially if you can go into a situation where they think they're in danger or something and kind of be like, yes, you have activity, but we don't feel it's malevolent in any way. But if anything does start to happen and you feel like it's going to hurt you, then we definitely come back. We do a lot of repeat cases or reinvestigations of the same locations, not because we didn't get activity, but I guess just to more put that family at ease, or maybe they didn't get as much activity recorded that night as they would have liked, or they're trying to contact maybe a loved one that was deceased there and we didn't get proof of it.
So when you guys are in a private investigation like that, what are you trying to solve? I always am interested in this question because so many times I've had my own feathers ruffled by teams coming on here saying, oh, well, we're just here to prove or disprove whether it's haunted. We don't really deal with how to get rid of the spirits.
Oh, no, we totally, if they feel like they don't want them there, we offer services of like cleansing or trying to smudge or sage the house or we teach them ways to protect themselves, whether it's with just basic salt and holy water and stuff like that, or crystals and charms, anything like that, and teaching them that you can speak up to it, that you shouldn't be afraid of it, that you can be like really, really strongly, as long as you believe it, be like, it's my house, or I make the ground rules and I don't want you in here. And we help with all that. So if they don't have the courage to do that, that's another reason people reach out to us. Maybe they just don't know what they can do or the experience, or don't have any experience. So we also want to resolve, if they have an issue like that, we will resolve that for them, hopefully. If not, we'll be back on repeat.
So are a lot of the ghosts that you were dealing with then, October, are you dealing with hauntings that are of, say, newer spirits that have crossed over in the last 50, 60 years? Or are you dealing with a lot of these historic spirits that have maybe been wandering around the state of Maryland for 200-300 years? Because I'm pretty sure there's still a lot of old residences and buildings around from that era.
We get both. A lot of the places we do, I think, are either residual or just old ghosts from the land. Like the land is haunted, not really the house. They just happen to kind of move through the house or the barns and stuff that's on the property. But I think some of the new houses that have just been built that aren't on one of those kind of either reservation, plantation, battlegrounds, as long as there's nothing like that, then who's to say it's not just a recent ghost or a loved one or something?
Cody, I'm going to test your history here a little bit, because being as far away in Canada as I possibly can from where you guys are, and my whole experience with Maryland is literally flying into Washington, D.C. to catch a connector, so I had about 15 minutes of actually seeing it from the air, so I apologize I haven't put boots on ground there. But nonetheless, when you are looking around for these ghosts, do you find in your estimates that the spirits are from a different century rather than, say, the last 50, 60 years?
Definitely. I mean, it is a mixture of both, but certain spots, for instance, Baltimore, they have a lot of accounts of seeing time period soldiers, colonial soldiers. Fort McHenry, you can see the soldiers in colonial attire, like the Revolutionary soldiers. You can see the British soldiers on some plots of land. Certain places down St. Mary's County, same ordeal. You can see colonial soldiers, especially Point Lookout. That was one of the biggest prisoner of war camps in that time period. So there's a lot of activity there, and it's a mixture of both around here for the most part.
Do spirits then, in your opinion, Cody, do they act different if they are, say, a spirit from 200-300 years ago rather than a spirit that's, say, 40-50 years old?
As for actions, not too much do they act too different. They don't speak differently, if that's what you're asking. Like, they don't speak in time period language or anything. They all pretty much can, if they're intelligent enough to respond to you, first off, if it's not residual activity is what I mean by that. They all pretty much sound the same. I've never really had one that makes me like, oh yeah, this is definitely Colonel whoever from 200 years ago.
No, I understand that. And the reason why I ask that is I run a paranormal tour here at our local heritage site to help raise money for it. And the spirits there, even though they, if they are communicating with us, they are, very, very accommodating. But, there is a time. I mean, they are right along the Gold Rush Trail that extended from California all the way to the Klondike and into Alaska. So, I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at it here, wondering, with the spirits, do you find that when you are asking them questions, are you able to get some sort of timeline as to when they may have crossed to the other side?
I've actually haven't got anything like that. I've never actually had a date of when a spirit has died in my experience.
So do you try and decipher whether or not they're from a different time, or are you just, okay, we got a paranormal experience here, how do we deal with this in order to help our client or to help our investigation?
First, we try to go in and see if they actually have something that's paranormal there, and then we'll determine what it is, like if it's time period or new age spirit, perhaps, within like the last 40, 50 years. And then we'll just go from there.
Go ahead.
No, I was just finishing that up.
Hey, October, I'm curious with you in regards to the type of activity that you have there. And we talked about the negativity that kind of comes out of, Baltimore the last 20, 25 years being one of the most violent cities on record in the United States. And with that negativity, do you think that there is a lot more dark energy than when you're dealing with the paranormal in Maryland, rather than, say, in other states or provinces in Canada where they may not have the type of death toll, or they may not have the type of anger that the spirits in Maryland do?
I think it also depends on how the spirit died. I feel like if you died at war or doing something violent yourself, you're obviously, as a spirit, you're going to have unfinished business or still be kind of stuck in that anger or rage or rampage, whatever you were on before dying. But I do think energy in general is going to promote activity, whether it's negative or positive. But having tons of negative energy, you are kind of more prone to getting malevolent spirits, or just spirits that may be kind of borderline that line of where you kind of feel like you might be in danger just because it escalates to a certain point.
Well, that makes sense, but I'm going to take this down a different road. Do you see a lot of possession, a lot of demonic type activity, or angry spirits then because of that negativity that's surrounded the state?
So far, our team has not encountered an actual possession. It's one of those things where we'd never wish it on anybody in the world, but I would like to witness it myself because it's such an incredible thing if you have that happen. But so far, we've never seen that. But we have had the really bad poltergeist activity where they're throwing stuff or things are flying off walls, stuff like that. And even clients complaining of getting scratches, but not Trinity or demonic scratches. Just kind of like maybe a normal scratch per se.
Have either of you ever been attacked?
I wouldn't necessarily say attack.
We personally have not been attacked, but I have had one, I guess we'll call it a ghost. I don't know if she was a ghost, though. I saw a little girl in the house I'm in now that has all the activity, but she radiated so much fear that when I saw her, I couldn't see, I couldn't move. It was like paralyzing. I couldn't even walk 3 feet back into my door to close the door and hide from her. So I don't know what she was spiritually, but definitely that energy there definitely didn't feel good. It felt like you need to hurry up and get away from this.
Wow, and I think we've all had that feeling before where it's just like, okay, this isn't good. I mean, I've had that in my backyard. I got some weird stuff that happens in my backyard where I've literally been, after a show at like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, my time, I will go outside and take my dog out. And all of a sudden, as I open the door, there's like this big hit of energy that says, yeah, not a good time to come on out here right now. Whether that's an animal or not, I have no idea. Or whether it is something paranormal, but that is one feeling that I've learned to trust, because I think you have to in this field. So when you guys go into a situation in October or an investigation, do you feel out the place before you set up all the gear and check it on out? Or do you just say, okay, put the business hat on and we're going to rock and roll this?
We actually always start by you meet the clients first. So we talk to the clients and then we'll set up the gear. But then we take just kind of like a walkthrough tour of the place. So that way we can feel like, hey, this bedroom feels really heavy, or this is making me feel like I can't breathe or something. If there are rooms like that, or hey, this room has a 20-degree temperature difference and it's freezing. So we just kind of feel out the house sometimes before we actually start the investigation, especially if you go into one where they have talked about themselves as a client feeling bad in certain areas or rooms.
What about Civil War? Was there any Civil War activity up there?
Around down in Antietam, in northern Maryland, there was a bloody battle that happened there. We did have John Wilkes Booth, after he assassinated the president, run into the Dr. Mudd house, which is probably 40 minutes north of where we live. They do claim to have some time period ghosts from the Civil War around there.
So when you go to a place, or have you ever had a chance to investigate where they found John Wilkes Booth, Cody?
No, we have not.
That would be kind of fun, you got to admit.
Yeah, well, they actually were doing investigations for a while, and then they had a team go in there, and I don't know what they did, but they upset the owner, and then they pretty much said no investigations for a while. And I think they're doing it again, which I'd like to get in on that, but I have to make sure.
Yeah, I think, I think that would be kind of cool. And I know around here that happened at one of our rundown asylums here a couple hours south of me, where television crew went in there and just made a giant mess, didn't even bother cleaning it up. And they had to ban their paranormal investigations in there as well. I mean, it really shows at some points the lack of respect that a lot of people have in this field. And, we could do an entire show on just the lack of respect of the paranormal, and I don't really want to get into that with you guys. But how do you deal with that when people say, oh, no, we've had paranormal teams here before, and we're just not really into that because we had a bad experience? So how do you combat those types of situations, Cody?
Well, if it's face-to-face, we'll tell them that we're obviously not like that, and we'll walk them through on what we will do and how we set up and how we pertain to the investigation, and then walk them through what happens at the investigation. And usually that kind of eases them. But if it's certain places like that, the house where John Wilkes Booth went to, if it's via email, if it's no is no. There's no change in that mind.
And you can't really blame them. You can't. Unfortunately,
I can't blame them for that.
It's the residual after effects that we all have to deal with when in this field. I want to get into a couple of stories here, because you guys have had some incredible stories, October, that you have investigated in regards to the paranormal. And I often, in perusing what you guys do, I saw a few pictures of around some pretty old cemeteries around there. Do you find a lot of these cemeteries have some pretty good ghost situations hanging around?
The cemeteries are kind of hit or miss. I mean, I love photographing cemeteries, and we spend many a night in cemeteries, but we spend many a quiet night in cemeteries where we get absolutely nothing. And then we'll get other cemeteries will have like crazy EVPs. Like we actually got a baby crying while being in an aisle of rows of tombstones of children who didn't make it from not sure what time period.
Around the
1800s. And literally, we're in the middle of nowhere in a cemetery, and you literally hear a baby crying. We're like, wow. So sometimes you get those profound encounters, and sometimes you honestly don't encounter pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. Recently, you guys did a lockdown at the Jenny Wade house. For those of us who aren't familiar with Jenny Wade, what's the story of this place that's makes it haunted?
Well, the Jenny Wade house, the story of her is she's the only civilian casualty to happen in the Civil War in the United States. And, well, reported, I presume. And she was, Jenny Wade was a Union supporter. She would bake them bread every morning and deliver them water to the troops. There was a sniper that was posted up in the Farnsworth, and he was taking shots down at the Farnsworth, by the way, is a hotel that's there. But he was taking shots through the window, the Confederate soldiers, down at the Union line. and somehow one of those bullets went stray and shot Jenny Wade in the stomach through the door, which the actual bullet hole is still in that door, and she died in that house later on.
So
And part of the
go ahead.
Oops, sorry. And part of the thing with Jenny Wade is she wasn't very old. She was under 20 years old at the time. I think she was like 16 to 18 years old. And we don't know if she was pregnant. We don't know. I know she was seeing someone, like she was, I don't know if she was betrothed or not, but I know she definitely was with someone at the time. And she was literally just making bread in her kitchen, and next thing you know, it just sprayed by gunfire.
So what kind of activity is said to be happening at the Jenny Wade house?
A lot of people they have a bunch of windows in that house. I probably couldn't tell you how many, but every pretty much wall has a window in that house. So a lot of people say they see her in the windows or just other spirits. I'm not sure. A lot of people think her father is still in the house. So when we went, we asked for Jenny and Mr. Wade. And the house actually also has two little boy spirits, which we used one of our friends' SLS cameras, which is the new Kinect ones that do the motion capture. And we saw two little boys via Kinect, so I don't know if they were actually there and we caught them and it was the right two little boys or not. But they're said to shake the chain that they have it blocks off the toys in one of the upstairs bedrooms. And they were shaking the chain and we were playing Dixie. And you could definitely see it moving and stuff. So it does have some activity. And we did get our whole EMF and everything set off, but I didn't get anything in pictures while we were there.
How weird is that to be in that type of a historic type building where literally it's a part of history? And to know that that young lady could still be wandering the halls thinking that, she has a life ahead of her, maybe college, maybe a family, maybe, the way the United States was growing so fast at that point that maybe she could have played a critical role in helping form government, even though it was very male dominated at that time. What does that feel like?
I think a lot of the cases we do are kind of tragic and heartbreaking, especially when they are young or you have the passing of a child or a loved one or somebody that just kind of didn't get to live out their life to the full expectation that they may have had. We do a lot of cases where people have had like maybe a son pass away or something or a husband, and they're wondering, is this why we have activity? So sometimes it is hard, and especially if you're one of those empath people, which I call Cody an empath. That's just what I call him, because he's able to feel more stuff than I am, whereas I kind of see and encounter things. I don't always feel their emotions, but he sometimes will just get hit with emotions of what we presume might be from ghosts, but I don't know, they just come out of nowhere. We also did a case up here where they supposedly had buried a slave in the kind of like the root cellar basement area. And everyone in our team down there just felt kind of horrible, like terribly anxiety-ridden and nauseous and heavy and thick. It was really hard to breathe down there. So in cases like that, I feel like the energy there kind of still sucks you in, and you're almost feeling not what they felt, because it's never going to be on the same level, but at least you experience something kind of emotionally too.
Talk about that emotion, if you don't mind, for a moment. Because for a lot of people, when they may not have been in that paranormal experience or in that type of building where, they can just cut the tension with a knife, so to speak, to use a strange cliche about it. But I mean, every building has its own feeling, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, especially if it's a house with activity. Certain rooms, like I said, you will go in and you'll feel a difference just between rooms of where someone may have died or still inhabits that room, especially whatever energy they're emitting, you can feel it. So sometimes you can be just like, say you're having a normal day or you're investigating, everything's going great, and out of nowhere you're like, I feel incredibly sad, or I feel incredibly overwhelmed. It's more like an overwhelming sensation of emotion. Like, sometimes it could even be joy. It doesn't always have to be a tragic loss or a depressing kind of feeling. Sometimes you can be like overjoyed, like say a mom when she has her first child or something you personally haven't experienced, but you're getting the emotional experience that in your life makes no sense, but for paranormal research, everything's kind of normal. If it's abnormal, it's paranormal, and that's normal. So it's a weird circle.
Cody, do you get that too? That feeling as well, with the tension of when you go into a building and whether or not you can feel the emotion or not, or are you so scientifically drawn to the location that you're not even worried about something like that to try and distract you?
No, I definitely feel the energy in rooms. Some of them you can go in and it's like, wow, something does not want me here. Others, your hair will stand up, you get chills, kind of feel nauseous in some of these rooms, but almost you can't breathe. There's something in your throat. All sorts of different feelings.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and I can respect that, as we got about 5.5 minutes here before we have to go to our first break of the night. But when you are in those types of locations that are, say, a couple hundred years old, for most people, we've never been in a building that old. We just haven't. And you're lucky, you're on the East Coast there, Cody, where you have a lot of those types of facilities and buildings that are still up and running and been well maintained and taken care of. So when you're in there and you are going through those types of buildings, do you ever get the feeling that, there is something that maybe you just can't put your finger on that is unexplainable?
Definitely. You'll get feelings in all sorts of rooms from you don't know where, and it's not pertaining to you, because you'll go, and most of the time it's kind of a neutral feeling on an investigation, and for instance, you'll just get hit with like a sense of I don't know, per se, say sadness, or otherwise just uneasiness. You can't explain where it comes from, and definitely certain spots, like certain buildings, are more gravitating towards weird energy like that. But then there are buildings that are 200 plus years old and they don't have any weird feelings inside of them.
Well, that's a strange comment to make, because you would expect if it's a couple hundred years old and the building beside has some strange activity or feeling to it, that it would carry over to the next building. Why do you think there's a difference between that?
The difference I can't explain, but sometimes it just happens that way. We were recently up in Gettysburg, and with the amount of bloodshed that happened there, some buildings you go in, you're like, I do not want to stay in here. You're looking over, trying to tell your people that you're with, let's get out of here. But then other buildings, you feel like it's an oasis in there. You just want to stay.
October, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel like some buildings just don't have any kind of like negative energy. I feel like every building has its own energy, where sometimes it is positive, and even if they have activity, it could be positive activity, or you just don't feel a reason that you shouldn't be there or need to leave or feel kind of sick. Sometimes you just feel normal, like it's a normal house, or even better than normal, like, hey, this is kind of cozy in here, even though it's so old. So maybe, I don't know if it matters about the land or the depth there, but it definitely differs. Every single place and room differs.
And it's weird how that works, though. It's weird because, I guess it depends on what happened historically with each building. That kind of draws you to that conclusion, does it not, October?
Yeah, I guess it's depending on who inhabits it or previously inhabited it, and it depends on if they died, how they died. Maybe it has nothing to do with death. And I have this theory that maybe sometimes they're just other people from other dimensions or realms that we don't really know if they're there or not, but they overlap. So who knows where some of the activity comes from? The possibilities there's just tons.
We only got about 90 seconds here before we have to go to break. Is there anything that you will not investigate when it comes to the Paranormal October?
Me personally, no, but I will say cryptids are some of the more scary kind of investigations because you're talking about assuming that every cryptid out there was real, a real creature or beast that could physically harm you that you have to respect, and you're in their territory at that time.
Oh, we know that all too well. We're going to get into your cryptid story next hour because I want to hear that. I really want. And I'll be honest with you, I had no idea there was any Bigfoot in Maryland. It just seems so wrong. I don't know why. It just doesn't roll off the tongue well.
You forget that the biggest mountain range is on the eastern coast, is the Appalachian, and
Yes.
West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia, they cite them all over the Blue Ridge Mountain.
I know, but you just Bigfoot isn't synonymous with Maryland. Give me California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia. I'll even take some Colorado on the side just for some dessert. but I mean, you just don't think that Maryland would be tied. It's weird. It's unfathomable, to be honest with you. You know, do you guys have Dogman out there too?
I don't know about in Maryland. We definitely have an urban legend about one, but I know my friends in New York have had a Dogman encounter, but so far we haven't seen him. But they have a creature here called the Dueyo, and he's supposed to be a dogman, wolfman, some kind of creature that resembles a dog that stands upright, like bipedally.
All right, we're going to get into that in hour number 2. We are joined tonight by October Rainne Cody Giffin, as they are part of Double Saints Paranormal Research Society, as we are talking about the ghosts of Maryland tonight on Spaced Out Radio. They also investigate some cryptids, too. Maybe a little aliens. We'll get into that in hour number 2 with October and Cody. And we want to say thank you for tuning us on in. We'll be back with hour number 2 on Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tess Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's the encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Beamer inviting you to check out The Encounter, our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything is an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, author Douglas Robinson comes in to talk about werewolves and vampires. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. And if you're looking for our archives, go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Mescalofredosis. Mescalofredosis is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, we got a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Tonight, we have October Rainne and Cody Giffin on with us. They are paranormal investigators out of Double Saints Paranormal Research Society, based out of the state of Maryland. And man, do they have some great stories to share with us tonight. October and Cody, welcome back.
Hey, thanks again for having us.
Now, October, right before the break, we started talking about this cryptid encounter you had. And I'm in the middle of Bigfoot country here, man. And I can tell you point blank that I love a good Bigfoot story. They are just eerie. They are awesome. And this encounter, and being on the West Coast here, we don't think anything of Bigfoot happening out where you are. It just doesn't seem feasible, plausible. Yet here we are discussing a Bigfoot encounter that you had. So why don't you take us through what happened?
Okay. So our Bigfoot encounter began as a normal ghost call. We were called out to a family who lives in southern Maryland, and they have a large property. And on their property, they have what they called a gravel pit, but it actually didn't consist of any gravel. It's more like if you took a hillside and you dug out a bowl of dirt. So it's like a giant hole in the ground that has cliffs up where you could stand on the cliff if you walked up the hill, and then below would be the bowl in the ground where you can park your car and stuff. And they have a lot of like farmland back there and a lot of wood. So we were called there because they actually had a case request, which was to contact the spirit of a man who was the former owner, who they were told died there by being trapped between his car and a tree stump because he went to dump trash down in this giant pit in the ground, and I guess he didn't put it in park, or it was in the wrong gear, or just didn't hit the brakes. I don't know what went wrong, but this poor guy got crushed, and he tried to claw and dig his way out and screamed for help for hours, and either died of, I guess, shock or injuries, and he never made it out. He died in that pit. So we were against the stump. I guess it might not have been as big of a pit back then. So we just went there thinking, okay, we're going to be out in what we thought it was going to be a gravel road, because they said gravel pit, doing a ghost investigation, looking for intelligent responses to say, hey, it's this man. But very early on in that investigation, it didn't feel very ghost-like, because we started out on the top of the hill portion, which overlooked the bowl of dirt in the ground. And on the hill part, even from the very start, while we were setting up and doing just our normal EVP sessions with the spirit box, you could constantly hear like something was walking in the trees beside us. And at first we kind of ignored it. And then it started to stir up all the animals around us, where we heard a coyote, which a lot of people also don't realize down here we get coyotes on and off. It's very rare, but they do kind of come in phases. So we heard a coyote, and then we heard what we thought was a cow, but apparently the farm closest to it is miles and miles away, so maybe we didn't hear a cow after all. So we're hearing these other animals stir, and we're hearing walking around us, but not like normal animal walking, as in like, say, a fox or a deer, which are really common. It's our raccoons and possums here. So it was more of like very few steps that went a long distance, because it didn't keep walking. It would make maybe a few sounds of like sticks breaking and leaves and then stop. So we heard this going on during the whole first part of our investigation with the spirit box. And eventually I sent Cody down on top of this hill, it looks like there's a cornfield on your left if you're standing where we were, and then on your right is a little bit of woods, like a tree line, and then it ends with the cliff where obviously we couldn't walk down it because it's really high. So in the tree line area, we were hearing all this noise, not the field side. But in between it, where there's just a pathway, there was no trees. I made Cody walk down there because both his mom and Aunt Jeannie, which is what we call Cody's aunt, they were with us that night instead of Cody's brother, who normally paranormal researches with us. They were hearing the sounds, too, behind them, and they were also seeing a shadow down in the little pathway. So we send Cody out because he's the guy. We sacrificed him first, We sent Cody down there he has the IR camera, and we had a static full spectrum camera on my tripod down in the actual gravel pit. At first it was pointed towards us, looking at the cliff, so we would catch anything that moved down in the pit, and it could catch like what we were saying still. But Cody goes down this pathway, and the whole time he's still hearing the stuff rustling and like the leaves and twigs and sticks breaking, the very, very loudly snapping. And the whole time everyone's kind of jokingly going, this sounds kind of like a cryptid case, or like we made so many jokes about Sasquatch that night, and little did we know that maybe we were on the right track. But he goes down there and he's hearing all those snaps and stuff, and then he has me come down with him, and we walked even further down this pathway, but nothing. We were seeing absolutely nothing, just hearing a bunch of noise. The night we were there, though, right after all this, starts a fireworks show at a restaurant. I don't know how far away, but to where you could hear the fireworks, but you couldn't see them. But I wonder if that's what maybe drew them out that night, or at least caught their attention. And there was a lot of like air travel too in the beginning, a lot of airplanes going over us. So maybe that kind of, I guess, piqued their interest or suspicion to come check out. Plus, I mean, when you have people out in the woods doing God knows what with a static box that makes a lot of noise and a laser pointer grid, stuff like that, I think may have drew them in as well. So we finished up investigating the top of the hill portion that overlooks the gravel pit in the ground. And we just did like the spirit box session. We set up a laser grid. I pulled with dowsing rods just to see if we could get responses to anything. We did that up there, and we were like, okay, let's go and look down in the pit. Little did we know, while we were up top on the hill, when not a single one of us, there were just 4 of us that night, Cody, me, his aunt, Jeannie, and his mother. We all had tape recorders, and we had 2 video cameras going the whole time, but it got really dark because it's in the woods. So it was just us 4. But while we were on the hill, the full spectrum camera that nobody was touching on a tripod down the gravel pit, you can actually hear something plucking on it in the video feed and shaking it, like bumping it, but not. And you can hear them walking around it, because even though it wasn't an actual gravel pit, it had dirt and it did have a lot of rocks. So you could hear kind of like the rock kind of sound, like when somebody walks, you could just hear it. But we didn't see anything on the camera. It was just pretty much black because it got really dark really quick. So we didn't know that was going on the whole time. We also, when we looked back at the video, we totally forgot that we thought we had only been pelted by rocks in the pit. We actually heard something land while still on top of the hill portion that probably was a rock as well, because you could hear the thump, almost like somebody took a book and just like slammed it down really hard on the grass, like that nice like softball sounded like throwing a baseball down really hard. So we actually got 1 rock thrown at us up on the hill, but we just didn't recognize it at that point. We thought, maybe something fell out of a tree or something. So we decided to change it up and go down into the pit, because our EVPs are kind of, we got a few words, but they didn't sound like this guy. We actually got like a female voice doing responses back to us. So we went down inside the pit, which is just kind of like a dome, and if you stand inside the gravel pit, you have the back wall is just like a cliff, a rounded out cliff with trees on it. So we had our backs on that side, and there's trees and hills on, let's say, half of it pretty much. The other half is open, and it leads to just more woods, like solid trees. So we're standing facing the trees the whole time. But we were getting those kind of like footstep walking sounds from every direction. Even when on top of the hill portion, we would hear it behind us. We would hear something walking to the right of us. So I don't know if there was more than one, or they were just one that traveled, because it walked so, like, it covered so much distance that it could be in different places kind of very, very quickly, whereas a human, we have to take a lot of steps to cover that distance. But we heard that going on most of the night all around us, from on top of the hill and inside the gravel pit. And we get down there and we set up our gear. We take the full spectrum off, and we're using that now as a normal camera. We still have our IR camera going, which is bright enough to see in front of you, but not inside the tree line. Like, you could tell that there were trees there, but honestly, it was too dark to see what was going on. But we did get, like, shadows of really giant black figures while we were there. And Cody's mom and Aunt Jeannie saw one even on top of the hill that Cody and I missed because we were walking down that little pathway. But at the time, we just thought, hey, maybe it was a ghost or something, or just who knows what was going on out there that night. But down in the gravel pit is when everything kind of started escalating, because literally we couldn't go anywhere besides back to Jeannie's Jeep, which we all rode in that night, which was on the part that was in between the dome or the bowl and the woods. So we have the Jeep to our right because we're standing facing the woods. So the only place we could go that night would be to run back to the Jeep, which was maybe 20, 30 feet away, if that. It wasn't very far, but everything else, we were surrounded on every side by a cliff or trees or something. So we set up our gear and we pull out, like, we have a trigger object that we love to use, which are those little dollar store glow balls. And essentially you just smack them really hard and they light up like a neon ball, like a color. We used yellow that night. And we had Cody throw it on top of the cliff to see if something would either, like, throw it back or knock it back down into the dome. But we never recovered that ball that night. I'm pretty sure somebody took it because we got back up on the hill before we left and looked for that little glow ball, and you could not see it in it. Obviously, it was still neon, so you couldn't miss it. It's a radiating light like a flashlight, and it just disappeared. But down in the pit, once we start going, it starts getting to where we're hearing sounds now that sound more like growls and clicks and whistles, and it's setting off the birds. And eventually we got to where we heard, like, tree knocks, and I was like, that's when it clicked in my mind, because I'm one of those people who just loves cryptids, and I'd seen all these shows on them and stuff, and I'm thinking, I think we might be having a Sasquatch encounter. And so I go and we had a dowel rod that we used kind of as a camera stick, if that makes sense, like a handle. So I tell Cody, take the dowel rod off and go beat one of these trees that are on our right. So we find the skinny little tree, and we're whacking it, like, as hard as possible with a stick dowel rod, not one of those skinny ones. It's maybe almost 2 inches wide. And Cody's knocking where he's, like, in series of 3 or 4. We never did anything less than that. And we would wait, and you could hear where it would knock back, but it didn't knock the same number of times. Say, if we knocked the tree 3 times, it would do maybe 2 knocks or 1. So we're like, wow, we're getting, like, responses. And so we start trying to do whistles back to it to see if it could whistle back to us. So we whistle, and you do hear it whistle back. But there also were birds, so it's kind of hard to say, okay, 100% that it was a creature out there making the whistle sound and not the birds and stuff. At one point, it scared the birds when it growled to where you could hear them on the tape recorder. The birds started taking off flying and cheeping and stuff, right? And it was probably, I don't know, less than 1 in the morning. We were there from like nightfall, which was around like 8 to 9 p.m. until like 3 in the morning or so. So we were there the whole time it was dark. But while in this pit and we're having all this activity, we're also getting like, a lot of times it sounded almost like a tree was being snapped. It was really loud, or they were jumping out of, I don't know if they were jumping out of trees or just breaking or stepping on trees, but everything escalated where it wasn't just like walking. They were doing things where they were coming near us because you could hear them closer, and you could hear on Jeannie's Jeep, like plucking sounds like plastic being plucked. And so we have like these great little tape recordings where I'm like, and Cody's like, yeah, it had been. So it was doing a lot of weird stuff that night that we couldn't explain as being a spirit. But what really got us was we were like, okay, let's turn the laser grid back on down in the pit. And you could see, when you shine a laser grid, it's almost like the lights go on for infinity. So if something moves in front of it, usually it kind of makes a 3D image where you can see the lights outside of the normal kind of shine of them. Or what we had that night, something completely blocked out the laser lights where they were there and then they would kind of be gone. And then eventually they came back on. It was like a giant mass was right in front of the tree line or in the tree line where we were shining the laser grid that would block it out. And then it would have just, maybe minutes later, it was like they just came back. And then we had incidences where at one point the laser grid just stopped working and my flash on my camera had stopped working. I'm just shooting with like a normal SLR at that time, so I could get pictures of the location, and sometimes you catch ghost on pictures, but not all the time. So I'm like, okay, let me use this flash, and we're going to take some pictures while we're in the gravel pit area and see if we can kind of like, when we review them, if we get anything. And this is where, once we had the whole encounter, it solidifies it was more of a Sasquatch encounter for us. Because in the pictures over by Jeannie's Jeep, which was to our right, it was like the Jeep and then you have some trees and woods behind it. You can see in some of the pictures where if I took, say, I have like a series of 5 pictures with the Jeep in them, there's brown figures in them that look like apish humans, but they're totally covered in this dark auburn hair where it's this red-brown. And you can tell where they have like an eye area, a nose area, and a mouth area, but their arms are covered in hair, and it almost looks like they have really dark fingers that are gripping the Jeep, because you can see it. The Jeep is blue, so if there's something brown on the Jeep, that is not part of the Jeep. So you can see in some of the pictures I took, we think at least 2 of them where one of them is kind of like holding the Jeep, where we can see it looks like an arm on it. And because I took pictures in succession, we can go back in areas and say, in this picture, all the greenery in the trees is green. And they're very skinny trees. They're not thick trees down there on the right side where we took the pictures. They're very, like, maybe 5-inch trees. Like, they're not very big in diameter. So there's nothing like big and brown and stumpy in that area, or a giant oak tree or anything. And they were kind of white, like birch trees, but not birch trees. They just were very light in color. So it wasn't part of the tree. And you can clearly see it's green, and then there's brown, and then green again, and then brown peeking out, where it looks kind of like head, shoulders, and hands area, but we didn't get like a full body or feet or anything. It was just almost like they were like standing or half hunched by the Jeep. So that for us was what, when we came home, kind of solidified it was a Sasquatch. Besides the growls and the sounds we were getting down there, it got to where we were getting scared because they were throwing rocks at us, but not just little rocks, like 4-inch rocks. So they were making really, really loud sounds, and poor Jeannie, too, came at her side down in the gravel pit, so she kind of freaked out the most, and she got really scared. Both Jeannie and Cody's mom wanted to leave really early that night, and it was Cody and I who decided to stay, kind of, and force everybody to stay and be like, no, this is like a one-of-the-kind experience. We've never experienced anything like this, and
Isn't that always the case where you have these incredible unknown experiences and somebody always wants to leave early?
Yeah, right. They were like so scared that night, which I don't blame them. I mean, if something throws a rock at you, you're actually in danger at that point. If they were trying to hit us, I don't know if they were, because it didn't hit us and it landed, say, 2 feet away from us at times, but it was very close to hitting us. But we got like intelligent knocks back, and we got some growls and some clicks and whistle sounds, and what we call cooing, which is like the sound the guinea pigs make, where they kind of like like that sound. We got things that kind of mimic that, like whoops and like weird garble language and stuff like that, which I don't know, I had heard might be like a Sasquatch thing. And twice we got this weird stench, like not the sulfur kind of like nasty swampy creature kind of scent. It was more like super rich dandelion greens and lawnmower musk, like lawn clipping musk, like if you just mowed your lawn, and like onion grass, like if you hadn't showered and you have like some manly musk going on and you'd been outside all day sweating. It was like that, but very earthy, not dirty, just like, or not like the sense of the earth, but like just like you'd been outside and really, really nasty, but not like where you got kind of like nauseated by or anything. And it was just kind of like walked by, like it was close by, but nobody touched us per se, but Cody's mom and Jeannie felt like something was coming towards them and may have like pushed them in some way or pushed something towards them. So at one point they kind of jumped back from that. But in total, I think we got 3 to 4 rocks thrown at us that we could hear. But I think all of those signs to me the whole time, I was like, we're having a Squatch encounter. And it was where, like I said, either there was more than one, because we were basically surrounded. We would get sounds of moving in the foreground, like in front of us, and then behind us, and then to the right and left of us. And we're down in a circle, so there's nowhere we can go. And I really don't think it was, say, like kids or just somebody messing with us, because, one, they would have to be huge, because the sounds of the walking, like you said, they'd covered so much distance in a short period of time. And I highly doubt somebody's out there in, like, or something, because it's pitch black.
I'm curious, if you don't mind, in regards to the encounter that you had. Oh, their cell phone just went dead. We're going to get them right back on the phone here. 1 second here. But in regards to that, oh, that's all right. That's all right. We only lost you for a quick second. You're having bad weather there, too. That's what we're going to blame it on, or we're going to blame it on the Sasquatch.
Yeah.
We're going to blame it on Sasquatch that time. But I wanted to just ask you, in regards to the experience you were having, how far away were the closest neighbors, and did they know that you were investigating at that area? You know, did the fact that maybe there were, some, tricky teenagers or early 20s people running through the forest trying to freak you out a little bit more, or did that come across your mind?
Oh, yeah, that was our first thing. Even on, like, the tapes of it on the recorders, you can hear us being like, is somebody messing with us? They have to be messing with us. We thought, like, maybe they had their kids, like, teenage daughters who, like, were just, I don't know, out in the woods causing chaos and kind of, like, set the whole thing up to kind of frame us and play with us. But I don't think so. And the nearest house had to be miles away. I mean, we're like back in farm country and then in the woods from farm country at the time. Like, we drove to a nearby cemetery, parked our car there, and then everybody got in Jeannie's Jeep to drive to this house, because it's very, like, off-roading kind of terrain. Like, it's a lot of hills and a lot of dirt and a lot of fields to drive over. So we didn't take my tiny little car back there because I don't know if it would have made it or back out, honestly. So, like I said, it was really hard to, in that area at least, unless you were somebody who traversed it a lot, to find your way in the dark, and then to do all that back to us and make the sounds and make the smell and everything. I just felt like it was a lot.
Had the owner of that property seen or heard of Sasquatch in the area before?
No, and they actually don't believe it was a Sasquatch. I mean, Cody and I believe it was, but a lot of our team is very conflicted on what we encountered, and so was the family when we went to review it. They kind of took the stance of, hey, we don't really know what we encountered that night. I mean, besides we have, like, some pictures that kind of look like brown creatures. Like, they thought maybe it was a forest spirit or a forest creature, but they didn't want to use, like, the term Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything. They kept it in the term of spirits, and I guess, I mean, that's fine, because, you know, everybody, it's not like people are ready to just believe overnight that they exist if you never thought they existed, whereas Cody and I already believed they existed. We just had never seen or encountered one before.
So with what you experienced there, how did you contrast the evidence to what other people are doing in order to determine whether or not it was Sasquatch activity?
I just kind of went through, and right afterwards, I went through, like, other people's YouTube videos, and I guess kind of like what we're doing now, like podcast interviews, and I listened to other people's encounters, and we downloaded, like, squatch sounds on our phone and stuff so we could go through them to see if anything kind of, like, matched what we had, and then, or the behavior types. And I'd seen, like I said, shows and stuff about them all the time, but I mostly just kind of asked around, and now I'm on, like, Bigfoot believers on Facebook and all that. I just kind of like to read other people's stories and be like, maybe this is it. And I honestly have, like, Squatch PTSD after this happened, and I'm someone who, like, we go into the woods at night all the time. So that's why I think Cody and I took it the hardest, because we literally, like, go bug hunting, and I go take, like, photos of insects at night and stuff like that. That's just something we do, or go collect leaves and bugs and stuff. So we were always out at night. So to all of a sudden have an encounter like that, it makes you go and think, well, if there were Squatches there, who's to say they're not in this group of woods or this area of Maryland as well? Because this happened about 45 minutes away from where we actually live. It was in a different area, but I still, in my mind, was going, everything, like, I heard around, like, the outside of my house for a while, or if we were outside and something fell out of a tree, I immediately thought, like, we were going to get pelted by rocks or something. So I had, like, weird Squatch, like, traumatization for about a month or so. And now it's gotten way better. Like, we finally went out and did, like, bug hunting pictures at night again. But at first, it definitely freaked me out. And I feel like if it wasn't real or just people, I wouldn't have. If I could tell it was people or just thought 100% it was people, I wouldn't be that scared about it.
Do you think there was any tie-in between searching for the paranormal activity and this potential Sasquatch encounter picking up the energy on that?
I think so. And like I said, I think a lot of the devices we use also might have brought them in, because I don't know. I've always heard that they're interested in, like, lights and fire and noise and singing and stuff like that. At one point, we had even, in our investigation for spirits, had played, like, Native American music really loud, trying to see if we couldn't get the guy who died there, maybe we could get, like, a Native American, or we could get, like, old British people, or old American people just from way back in the day who were on that land. So we were doing all this kind of, like, noisy look at us stuff, and just, like, the fireworks were going on for about a half an hour when we first got there, and planes were going over when we first got there, and then it got pretty quiet at some point.
So when you started having these rocks pelted at you, and we're not talking little pebbles here or even inch long,
No, they
inch
were
big
big.
rocks. I mean, Sasquatch has been known to throw some pretty big rocks. I mean, at some point you had to take a look at it and think, okay, there is no way a human could throw a rock that size that far.
That's what we were thinking. Not only was it that, but the footfall that we heard and the sounds that we were hearing and the rocks being thrown. We got rocks thrown at us like from the hill while we were in the pit, and then we got rocks thrown up towards us while we were on the hill from the pit. So, I mean, not to make fun of Cody, but I watched him throw the little glow ball and try to get it over the cliff. And at first he didn't make it for like a few times, so we had to rethrow the glow ball. And that's something that's like 3 inches in diameter and super light, let alone a rock. So whoever did it had a really good arm because it went a long way and it made a lot of noise when it hit the ground. It had a lot of force behind it. Yeah, and we caught all of this on the audio, and we have video of everything, but you can't see them on video. And what we saw in person only looked like giant black shadows to us. We couldn't tell what it was out there.
With those black shadows that you saw, how many did you see? And like, how many of these potential Sasquatch did you think were in the area at that time?
We estimate at least 2 to 4. It could have just been 2 that were doing a lot of moving, or literally one in every direction, kind of like surrounding us. Because that's where we were getting stuff from all sides that night. But I figure they had to be pretty big. And the shadows were, I don't know, like, because I feel like they would tower over Jeannie's Jeep or at least be the same size as it. How many feet you think the Jeep stands on the ground? 8 feet, 9?
I mean, it's a Wrangler.
Here's like a blue Jeep Wrangler. So you figure if it's standing kind of like level with the Jeep or near that, I mean, it's a big creature because I have trouble getting up into the Jeep and I'm only like 5'3" max. So it's a pretty big vehicle. But I figure at least 2 to 4. I can't say. We only saw like, or encountered what we thought was like 2 shadows moving, but that was just what we could visibly see amongst like the light going on because it was really dark. Whereas at least up on the hill, we started out towards the beginning of the night when it wasn't so pitch black dark where you could still kind of see things. So Cody's mom and Aunt Jeannie had seen one up there that we didn't. And then we were seeing things down in the pit. And the whole time I felt like we were surrounded. I felt like we kind of like were in danger or needed to leave. So did everyone, obviously, because his mom and Jeannie wanted to leave. And we kind of were like, no, let's stay. At the very end, they got in the Jeep and kind of left Cody and I outside of it because we were still trying to communicate with the creatures. And they were like, we were going to go home. So for safety, they were in the Jeep while we were still continuing.
Well, that would make sense because for a lot of people out there, they do believe that Sasquatch travels in packs of 2 to 4 creatures, usually around 3. And so the fact that you could have been surrounded by these creatures, I mean, that does make sense. Tell us about the smell. What did the smell like?
For us, it was like if you took a blender and you put like a lot of onion grass or like sweaty man with no deodorant and like dandelion greens and just grass and just everything that's natural besides like dirt. And if you balled all of that up and like you hadn't showered in a really long time, like it was like a green must, I guess. But it wasn't like pleasant green where you're like, oh, kale smoothie. It was very, very gross green, but not, like I said, it wasn't foul enough to make you kind of gag or anything, but it definitely was noticeable because honestly, we didn't smell anything else while we were down there because it was just nature. It smelled like normal. I don't know. You know what I mean? It definitely, once it wafted by, everyone was like, hey, do you smell it? Because the whole other time we didn't smell anything.
A lot of people say it's a real putrid smell. I've never smelled it. Even when I had my Sasquatch encounter with 2 of the creatures, we never got that smell. So it's a little foreign to me to try and figure out what it actually smells like. And I've been asked numerous times, did it smell? Did it smell? No, it didn't. It didn't crap its fur or anything like that. It just walked away. And it's amazing because, as weird as it sounds, I feel kind of left out that I haven't got the smell part yet.
I don't know. It didn't, like I said, we couldn't think or cross-reference anything that would make the sounds or the smell that we saw out there, because I try to, like, at first I was trying to be, like, really skeptical besides, like, in my head I'm like, we had a squatching counter, but with the team and everything, I'm like, okay, well, let's say man in a ghillie suit, he's out in the woods, he's bought some of those, like, you know, they make for hunting, like deer urine and all those weird things, or fox, or like hide your scent and dirt soap and stuff. And, like, he's got all of this stuff on. He smells gross. But like I said, in the end, it just didn't seem plausible that somebody went to all those lengths and in the dark, and like it had to be a team of them, where this guy was like a crazy good night runner that we couldn't hear, except for like every now and then to get around that area from all angles.
Either way, it's kind of intimidating when you're in that situation, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it was definitely, it got pretty scary at some times, to where because it was new and like we wanted to see what they were capable of and see what they would do. Part of you wanted to stay, and the other part of you is going, get in the Jeep and go home. Like, you need to get to the Jeep now because you're being thrown, or rocks are being thrown at you. It probably doesn't want you there.
When you went up to look for that glow ball that you threw up on the hill there, or on the rock quarry hill, were you expecting to find it? Were you expecting it to be thrown back? And what was the reaction when, I believe, Cody, it was you that stated that it was nowhere to be seen?
Well, we've never lost one because, like I said, they light up and they stay lit for hours. We bring one to like almost every investigation, especially investigations with children, because if you set them on the floor, they're still enough to where they won't move unless something moves them, or maybe if you had a really large gust of wind, it could move one. So we usually bring these things, and we've never not gotten the ball back because, I mean, usually nothing moves it. Normally it's wherever it landed, it stays there, and you can see it glowing, so you have a good record of where it's at. And during the investigation, we just kind of thought, well, maybe it's behind this giant tree branch or something. We just can't see it glow. But once we actually went on that hill and looked for it, there's nowhere up there that we wouldn't have seen it, because it was flat. It's trees, but it's flat on the bottom where it's just grass and trees. There's nothing kind of blocking it, because like you said, the trees up there were pretty skinny. They weren't very big trees, very thin trees. But yeah, Cody's looking for this ball, and I even started helping him look once he came back and couldn't find it. And I was like, sometimes Cody misses things, so I'll go look, but no ball, nowhere to be seen. And at some point, we saw something kind of glow in the woods, and I'm thinking now, when we're seeing that happen, it's probably taking the glow ball, because at the time we didn't realize it was being taken at all. We thought it was just being hidden up there by shrubbery or something.
That would be eerie, watching this glow ball go through the forests in the air. That would be freaky to watch. That might give me the heebie-jeebies a little bit.
We actually
Go ahead.
We actually tried to entice whatever we saw to throw back the glow ball a few times. I mean, to no avail. But we never recovered it. It was crazy. And there was no vegetation on the ground that was super high. It was all kind of low cut. So if it was laying on the ground, we'd have seen it. But it would have been really eerie to see that just being carried by something through the woods.
Did either of you go back there to check for footprints or further evidence, or was it a one and done type location where you got what you needed and figured that the family maybe didn't want you back?
No, after we had the review with them, we asked them we would love to come back and do it again, and they're willing to let us come back. So we haven't put the date for it yet. I wish we could have gone back just at daylight and looked for footprints or like stick breaks and stuff that we heard but didn't see that night. But we didn't because it was their property, and we give them like a specific time of when we're going to be there, and we're usually pretty good about not overstaying or ruining our welcome and stuff like that. So if we have a set time, we leave at that time. We don't linger around or mess up their property or anything. But we definitely plan on going back. And now we have a thermal cam as a team that we didn't have before. We got better IR lights so we can see further into the tree line and stuff.
Are there a lot of bears or big animals in Maryland?
In Maryland, usually around up in the northern parts, there's mountain lion, and there's bears, bobcats, but typically they're not found where we live down in the southern parts. They have been known to walk over there and one did swim from Virginia to the southern part of it about a year ago, but that's very rare.
See, up here we have a lot of animals that can kill you, and that's just being blunt. You know, I mean, I go to the grocery store before the show tonight because I had to pick up a few things for Mrs. SOR, and there's like 5 bucks with buck deer with like these giant antlers walking through the parking lot at that time, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, they could be very peaceful or they could turn on you, but nonetheless, I mean, whether it's moose, grizzly bears, black bears, cougars, whatever it could be, we got a lot of animals that could kill you here. And it's kind of funny to think about because the forest can be scary. But nonetheless, I mean, when you're in an area like you are where there's not any real known inhabitants like that and of that size or nature, did you feel, or let me rephrase this, has there been in your research, because obviously you looked into it, a lot of Sasquatch activity in that area?
Not in the areas where we were that night, but there are reports in Maryland. So I guess, yeah, like the Upper Marlboro area, which is like maybe an hour north of us, maybe like 30, 40 minutes north of us, max. So there are like accounts there, which is probably the closest encounter to where we were, because we were down in like La Plata, which gets a lot of like tornadoes and stuff because it's a lot of farm area down there, like fields and farms and woods. But it's also right on the water. So I think the area we were in actually, I mean, hypothetically, if it needed food and water, it has all that because we do have like tons of deer down here. I mean, deer are terrible, and tons of like small mammals and stuff and birds. But very rarely do we get, say, bears or cougars and stuff like that. Like very, very rare. Like, because like I said, I spent a lot of time in the woods, and we like to go hiking. And I was raised kind of like a tomboy, where my dad took me hunting and fishing and taught me how to do all that and kind of survive and stuff. So I had been in the woods my whole life, and even though, like, I know very, very slim chance I could run into, say, a bear or a deer who's in the rut and being aggressive and stuff like that, but I never really felt endangered in the woods before until that night, because normally there aren't big predators down here.
For a creature that big, it needs a food supply. So is there a lot of deer or rabbits or fish in the area?
Oh, yeah. Like, we're known, obviously, for the crabs, but we have tons of seafood, especially right by the bay. I mean, crawfish and crab. You got probably, like, oysters, all that. And then you have a giant deer population, like, to where, I mean, if you go out in the night, you're going to see over 10 deer. Just on your drive home in 30 minutes, you'll see probably 20 deer. So tons of deer. If they eat deer, they're in business because there's a lot of those going around.
10, 20 deer is child's play. Child's play.
Probably for where you live. Yeah, you're like, yeah, these people, you're like, I had moose up here.
Yeah, the big moose. The big moose. We don't get the big ones like they have in Alaska and the Yukon. and in northern British Columbia. We don't get them big ones. They're like a smaller size by a few 100 pounds, but they're still big. Still big. Awkward looking things.
I bet.
Awkward looking things. But yeah, I mean, obviously it always seems to be very intriguing because the one thing that, and it sounds so blatantly obvious, but I think it's one thing that we forget. I know up here or along the Cascades right down to the northern tip of California, a lot of the sightings always seem to happen within, a quarter mile of a water source. Whether it's a creek bed, whether it's a lake, or whether it's a river. So, I mean, how far away was the water source from where you were?
Probably half a mile. So the Wacomico River ran from the south to the north, which actually fed the Zakai Swamp, which is right next to it. You could walk to that, the river source from where we were in maybe 20 minutes of walking.
Of a lot of trees, though.
It is a lot of woodline walking, and there's a creek that the owner said was back there. We didn't see the creek because we got there. It was dark really quick, but there's definitely water source that they needed.
Now, have you guys gone back into that area, maybe in a public area, into the forest, just to see what's going on and done some investigation there? Because if Sasquatch has moved into that area, he's obviously still going to be there.
Since it's not our land, we haven't been back, but we do plan to go back pretty soon, within the next couple of months. But we haven't actually done another investigation to that spot. We would definitely like to, though, just to see what we can get.
The issue is there isn't, besides the church parking lot that's a few miles beside it, there's no other, public land or land that's not owned by the owners of the land that we were on, or, say, a neighbor that's miles away or something. It's pretty much just you have their driveway, and you have a church that's miles away, and you have neighbors that's beside the church. So pretty much anywhere down there, you probably shouldn't really hang out at night. I was just afraid if we, if we walked from the church through the woods over or something, that somebody would see the car or see lights or something and call the cops. Just, you never know.
Now, granted, we weren't trespassing. We had permission from the owner to be on the property.
That night.
Well, that's always good. And we got about 5 minutes here before we have to go to our second and final break of the night, and this hour has absolutely flown on by. But how much has this intrigued you, October, into getting into the cryptid realm? Because, I mean, you're in that area where you're close to Pennsylvania, you're close to West Virginia, Ohio, where a lot of weird, strange things happen. Has this piqued your interest to look into the cryptid realm a little bit more?
Oh, yeah. I actually was one of those people who just loved cryptids in general before I ever had an encounter. I never expected in my life to have an encounter, mind you, because of where we lived. I thought we were safe. So to have anything like that happen, and then when I met Cody and he told me his red eye story, I was like, are you sure you didn't see a cryptid? Like, maybe it wasn't a spirit or anything. Maybe you had a creature come to your window that happened to have red eyes, because I'd heard stories about, Mothman and, the Dover Demon, stuff like that, Jersey Devil. I'd heard about all of those. And, of course, your Bigfoots and all those, and the wolf and dogmen, stuff like that. So meeting Cody also, before we had the Sasquatch encounter, kind of was maybe there are cryptids down here and we just don't hear about them, or there's accounts that just kind of get buried and nobody talks about them. But since then, we looked into all of the other weird legends for Maryland, and we plan to go either hunting or just investigating areas that are known to have them, and definitely go back to the place we had the Squatch encounter. I would love to go back there, which we plan on. So, yeah, it definitely stirs your mind of, like I said, I wanted to reach out to other people who had encounters and look up, legends and stuff like that.
I don't blame you. Because the one thing that I've noticed since having an experience with that, it doesn't matter whether it's UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, or whatever, you sure get that craving for more. You really do get that craving for more. I mean, I hate to use, a term, but I mean, it's like a narcotic that you need that rush. You need that feeling in order to try and make it happen. Even though you can't make it happen, it all seems so circumstantial when it does. So how do you find, yourself going through this now, October, with the fact that you're wanting this to happen again and you don't know or you can't predict when it will?
That's the thing. We could go out every night down here and never encounter one again, or we could go back to the same area and have an even scarier, crazy, profound encounter. So it's all kind of like just up in the air. And plus, like you said, we could go to nearby states and look into their areas and parks or cryptid legends and try and maybe find some of those as well. But it's really luck. That was another big kind of like thought we had. And like you said, Jeannie and Cody's mom, they kind of are still where they won't say it was really like a Sasquatch because they still think it might have been a spirit. But for me, the difference was when I looked at the pictures, it's shown to me like it was a Bigfoot more than, say, a spirit, because usually spirits in pictures, obviously they aren't brown and covered with fur, but there are like Wiccan kind of like deities and stuff that are like, or creatures that do kind of like live in the forest and kind of like covered with trees and stuff. So, I mean, we looked into stuff like that as well. But to me, it was like the smell and how much work it would take to fake and all of that. And just like, we never got really like the chills you get with spirits. We never got touched. A lot of the time, well, besides Cody and his mom and Jeannie thought they got pushed by something, like energy pushed at them or air pushed beside them and stuff. But normally on ghost investigations, we actually get physically touched in some way a lot of the time, and that didn't happen. Temperatures never really changed too much. So we didn't get normal ghost stuff. And even though I guess hypothetically maybe an angry spirit could start throwing rocks at you, they're big, heavy rocks. It would take so much energy to lift those rocks, especially as a spirit. I don't know where they would have drawn that much energy from.
Well, on that note, we are going to go to our final break of the night. Coming up in hour number 3, we got another half hour with October Rainne and Cody Giffin from the Double Saints Paranormal Research Society based out of the state of Maryland. And at the bottom of the hour, Everett Themer with The Encounter comes on in for our nightly news section. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, author Douglas Robinson will stop by. We're talking vampires, werewolves. Are they real? We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. And if you're looking for our archives, they are free on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Mashalefridrosis. There we go. Mashalefridrosis. Damn it. Mashalefridrosis. Why can't I get that R in there? Either way, Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Mashalefridrosis. There, it's that R. That's what screws me up. Either way, our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. I'm still screwed up over that password. Damn it. October Rainne Cody Giffin are our guests tonight from the Double Saints Paranormal Research Society in Maryland, and we welcome them back to the show. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
No, thank you. This has been a blast, actually.
I am absolutely rattled over that password. Bill sets a password each and every night, and every night he tries to screw me up, and he got
How do you
me.
know how to spell that?
Well, he spells it out, and you see, Bill has a little bit of a trick that he plays on me. He used to post them early to me. He sends them to me each and every night because they are of a huge importance of this show, and especially for our space travelers. And I got to try and pronounce these damn things. And, you know, he sits back in his home in Ontario. It's all colored blue in favor of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He doesn't wear anything that isn't blue. And, yeah, it's just...
Washington Capitals.
Sometimes, no, it's... Yeah, I know. Washington Capitals. That's still... that one still hurts. Still hurts.
Yeah.
You know, I partied with Alexander Ovechkin a number of years ago.
Did you?
I did. I used to be in sports media, and in 2006, the NHL draft was in Vancouver. And he was out there with Ted Leonsis, the owner of the Capitals. And, well, we're at the Roxy in Vancouver one night, and Ovi comes on up and joins us. So,
right. When in Rome.
Well, exactly. Now, the funny part about it was he had a shirt that had looked like it had been bit through by about 8,000 piranhas. But nonetheless, you know, he was a good guy. Good guy. Have a lot of respect for him. Glad he won the cup. Cup. As long as it isn't Toronto. That's all I care about.
That's true.
Very, very true. Now Cardwell's going to go absolutely crazy with his Maple Leaf memes. I can just see it now. Nonetheless, in the last hour, we were talking about this amazing Sasquatch encounter that you guys had while on a paranormal investigation. I want to ask, and we only got until the bottom of the hour with you, so I do want to get into some more paranormal stories. But nonetheless, have you thought about, in that area, potentially putting up a gifting site?
Yeah, I would love to do that, because anything that encourages us to be able to see and experience more of them, even though it kind of scared us the first time because it caught us off guard. Going back, we would be prepared now, being, you know, we've come to accept it and acknowledge that this whole, that they exist in our state kind of thing's been blown now. So we would love to go back and set up a gifting station or cameras or something that we could just interact with them and catch it on camera, I guess.
Put lots of shiny objects on the ground and all around. Watch out for food, though.
Okay.
Watch out for food, especially if there's bears or raccoons or something in the area. That's the only advice. You know,
I guess we get a lot of raccoons.
Exactly. And they got frisky hands, let's be honest. Question coming from the chat room from Trip. He is asking, it's been proven that Vikings made it to the Americas. Have you either found or investigated any areas where the Vikings may have shown up?
That they're a little bit further north. What is it? Specifically in New York area. We haven't heard of any Viking sites down in Maryland that I'm aware of. Have you?
I haven't, but if there are, that would be something we would like to investigate.
Definitely. But no, the answer is no, we haven't investigated.
Yeah, but so far, no, we didn't know about that.
What's the freakiest investigation paranormally that you've had outside of this Sasquatch encounter?
We got growled at on an investigation. Well, I personally got growled at, but the funny thing was I was on my own and didn't even hear it because the rest of my team was in a loft bedroom where they were up a staircase above me, and I had taken one of the cameras and reporters down on the floor below it by myself. And as soon as I started to, walk by myself, on the floor below them, they apparently heard a growl after me, and came running down the stairs to make sure I was okay because they thought something bad was happening, but I didn't even hear it. That was the funny thing. So for them, it was probably scary, and I was just kind of ignorance is bliss. I didn't hear it. We've been in a barn that was pretty scary because it supposedly had an entity in it that when someone was young had pushed them down the loft, a whole floor of the barn. They had been knocked back into a hole and fell through the loft. So while we were up there, they love to use me as bait on my team. So we call me ghost bait. So they left me, of course, all the way on the other side of the barn in the pitch black, and I'm sitting there on the floor by myself, and I'm like, something's going to come up behind me, and I'm going to be all alone. But I felt like that. I felt like where you're being watched or something's kind of sneaking up on you. I felt like that during that investigation. But at least I didn't get thrown or anything. I didn't get hit or anything. So it didn't turn out as bad. But it was scary to think that something up there could do that or had that much power that I did that already once before. Move on.
I've only been attacked once, and that was back in May, where we have this ghost up in this barn on our tour. He's not too happy that we've got a couple of photographs of him, and he literally invaded my body, and I don't even remember walking to my friend Derek, who's a shaman, for help. And it was probably, and he was probably 200 yards away from where I was. Don't even recall it. And it was the weirdest, strangest, sickening feeling that I've had in a long time. And having to make amends with that guy was not good. He's since attacked another one of our tour guides since then. And it's something that we got to be very, very cognizant of. What do you guys do for protection just in case something like that happens?
We try to follow rules, when we do go on investigations, safety in numbers. Don't kind of ask the spirit to enter you or use your energy if you can help it. Don't give them permission to follow you or follow you home. You're not supposed to take items from the investigation that could be linked to a spirit or take a spirit home with you if you, as long as you don't want all that, because you never know. So we try to do that. And then, like I said, there are ways to kind of protect yourself if you believe in the fault lines, and if it's a religious kind of thing, you can have a cross or a rosary with you or some kind of religious pendant that you believe in, whatever religion you are, even if it's something more natural, if you just anything that you feel safe with, or the color white or clear, stuff that shows kind of protection. So we try to use all of that. And then of course, if you feel something really bad is going to happen, don't stay there. Unless you're trying to get Sasquatch evidence, but
Man, I don't know. I'm not a fan of getting invaded. I can tell you that. Just not a fan of that. And I think for the most part, Cody, there's a lot of people out there in this field who don't understand that protection is probably a good thing to have when it comes to any type of spiritual attachment.
A lot of people do not understand that, but it's a very good thing to have. As October said, we carry all of that with us, and that for that scenario, I haven't had any attacks on my own behalf, but we are prepared just in case.
I also wanted to add that another thing for protection. Oh no, it just slipped my mind. Oh no, sorry. Disregard.
That's all right. It happened. It's late where you are. It's 2:15 in the morning where you are. So I can understand. Do you believe then, okay, as we talked about in hour number 2 regarding any potential connection between, you guys being on a paranormal investigation and the fact that, you had this Sasquatch encounter occur, do you also believe there is a tie between the extraterrestrials as well, or UFO sightings in that area? What is that like for Maryland, considering there is a lot in a short distance of government facilities, albeit the White House, you have the CIA headquarters in Virginia, which is right next door. You have a lot of things going on there.
I actually kind of made that link immediately, even on the way home. I was like, well, now that we've seen Sasquatch, we have to be wary of getting abducted by aliens or seeing aliens now or weird crops and stuff. I just always kind of thought maybe they went together because I had heard stories like that. But so far, we haven't really experienced that. But I will say, like I said, the area we were in that night had a lot of air travel over it. And so who's to say what craft go over that area or not? And plus, we're near, bases and tons of, like you said, tons of places where sometimes they'll fly things and you don't know what they're flying. But, yeah, I definitely kind of almost expect now, since we had one encounter, that maybe over our lifetime we'll encounter, the Trinity or something, where we'll have an alien encounter next. I don't know.
Well, if you see a gray running around with a large head, ask him if his name is Carl. And if his name is Carl, make sure you tell him to come back and visit here. It's been a while since we had Carl around.
Okay.
Yeah. Carl disturbs me a little bit.
I imagine it would be.
See, Carl, and we always get new listeners, so I'll break this one down, and I know you guys haven't heard this story yet. But Carl, back on April 20th, 2015, while I was broadcasting my show, showed up at the window. And he was 7 feet away from me. And
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal. Looking back on it, I'm surprised I was as calm as I was, because I know I freaked out. I mean, what else are you supposed to do about that? You got to freak out.
Right.
But he needed a name, so I just named him Carl. Carl's kind of become our designated mascot of this show now.
I was going to say, we'll make little Carl stuffies and T-shirts.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. I mean, you got to love Carl. Carl is just Carl. I don't know how else to put him. He's just Carl. So,
was he a short or tall gray?
I don't know. That's the problem. I know he was a large-headed gray. See, where he was standing, I don't know if he was standing on my bench that I had right there. I don't know if he was standing on the ground. If he was standing on the bench, he could have been like one of those 4.5 footers. If he was standing on the ground, we're talking 5 to 6 feet.
Okay.
Right? So it's, if you see Carl, tell him he owes me a flight and we got some unfinished business.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll mention your name.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just drop the line. Hey, just say, hey, I know that guy. I know, you know that guy? I know that guy. Yeah, we need, just Carl. Damn it, Carl. Where the hell are you? This is why I always have the window. If you saw me in my studio, I'm always looking at the window because I keep thinking one day, just one day, I'm going to see Carl there, or there's going to be like a cougar at my window, mountain lion at my window, just kind of like
both are pretty
checking in, saying hello. I'm looking forward.
It'll happen one.
I hope so. I hope so.
I can't imagine they'd only visit once. I hope he would come back eventually.
Well, Carl's only come back twice. The second time I didn't see him, I just felt him. And his buddy, now I know Trip in the chat room is going to be giving me crap here because the second time Carl came around, I heard him and his buddies in my backyard and up my driveway going, having a conversation. That was kind of weird. Then I got called to a lake. But I decided to detour and go to Tim Hortons instead and grab an ice cap and a donut. Then I went to the lake.
That's so Canadian of you.
It was.
We've been to Canada, so we know about it, the Tim Hortons.
Exactly. And the point that I'm trying to make here is, let's just say these guys took me. All right? Let's just say these guys took me. I'm not going hungry or without a beverage. I can't say to them, hey, can you pull over at that Tim Hortons? I got to grab an ice cap here. They're just not going to land in the parking lot. I went on the donut run. And I know
you might be safe.
See, Trip here in the chat room. Exactly. Trip here in the chat room is already saying, damn donut run.
You might be saved if you have food in your system. Some of those surgery procedures take 12 hours before they'll operate on you.
Right.
Yeah. Well, here's a weird one that Rainne has just reminded me from the chat room. We do, every couple months, we have a gentleman come in here named Bill Hauser. He's a good friend of this show and of mine. And he is one of the best ghost box guys I've ever dealt with. And every time we ask him about Carl, we see if we can get Carl. So while we're doing this ghost box session, what comes up? The theme for Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
That's crazy.
The first two bars of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So if you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/spaced out radio, and you go to the last time we had Bill Hauser on, which would have been, let me see here, July 9th. So just a couple of weeks ago. And you go to the point where we try and bring Carl in. You can actually hear it if you want to check it out.
That's so crazy.
We'll check it out.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. It's completely weird. I don't really get it, but nonetheless, that's our Carl story. That is our Carl story. And we're sticking to it. Totally sticking to it. Carl. You have no idea the stress Carl causes me.
I can imagine.
Yeah. No kidding. All right. I want to ask you about one of your investigations here before we go, because you did the Haldeman Mansion. And the reason why that one kind of comes up to me is there is a very strict Mennonite sect called the Haldemans. My mother grew up in that family. All the men wear beards. The ladies wear these black caps to cover their hair. And it's just kind of weird. So that building, it's a very big double 2-floored or 2-storied brick type house. It looks eerie. It looks eerie in those photos.
It's definitely eerie. There's no connection between the Mennonite community and that, though. It's actually the home of James Haldeman, the biologist.
So give us the goods on that one.
So that one, there are alleged two or three child spirits there. A man named Jacob and a female spirit they don't know the name of. There was also, they said they have a ghost cat, which I didn't believe until I actually reviewed my EVPs, and then I heard the ghost cat, and I was totally thought she was just kind of like playing up the investigation a little bit. But that one, it's a building that sits right next to the Susquehanna River, and
In a railroad.
yeah, in a railroad. So we got there and investigated it, and we did get a few EVPs from it, from Jacob. Some we can't say on air just because of the content he says to us, but otherwise.
But we don't know if it was actual Jacob. You don't know that.
But it was still a pretty cool investigation. We had the angry spirit they say that's in the basement. I don't know if it's angry, but we did get moans when the recorder was by itself in the basement. You could hear it walking up the stairs. And the first time in 12 years that the actual woman that worked there, she said, as well, as she's worked there 12 years and it's never happened. After we heard the moan and the footsteps upstairs, the door that's down that goes up to the first floor swang right wide open. At the time, my whole team was sitting up there, and we went with 2 other teams, so there were 6 investigators up on the first floor. So we were like, "Whoa, the door just opened by itself." You can hear it on the audio recorder. It was just a good bit to catch.
When you're dealing with child spirits, how much different is it, or how do you change your game from when you are dealing with a child spirit comparatively to what you think is an adult spirit?
For me, I try to always go on the ones that have children personally, because I feel like they'd be attracted to me because children who are alive are attracted to me. And we use more trigger objects, and things that make a lot of noise, like old wind-up toys, or you try to find things that they'd be familiar with. If you can find period toys or trigger objects, something they'd be used to. So we try to use stuff like that to kind of entice them to create activity or play with these objects or move them for us or speak to us through them and stuff like that. Or play music. A lot of the time we use just go on YouTube and look for certain things or pre-download something to play back that they might have heard, like a song. And I can sing, so if I know a song from back then, I'll sing or hum or whistle, see if that kind of stirs up some activity.
We have a ghost of a young girl at our museum, and there's a ghost cat there as well that we've caught on EVP, by the way. And that cat has actually scratched one of our patrons during the tour. But nonetheless, when it comes to children, I'll give you some advice. Maybe try this out. Let me know how it works. Try nursery rhymes. Reading nursery rhymes.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
We have got really good success with reading nursery rhymes with the little girl in the house.
Yeah, we'll definitely try it. Anything helps.
Mm-hmm. So as we got about 3.5 minutes left with you guys tonight, I want to say thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio. It's always a pleasure, and I definitely want to stay in touch with both of you in regards to everything and see how your investigations go, especially into Bigfoot. But
yeah,
what is the role for the rest of the year for your team? What's your plan?
We are doing a couple re-investigations of residential places. We want to go back to Haldeman Mansion as a full team, bring our whole team that we have now there. We'd also like to do some of the old insane asylums, and I would like to do maybe go to Salem or just go back to Gettysburg and do that some more. Go to Antietam. What about you?
And I know down Solomon's Island, which is actually where we live, I want to just kind of bring our equipment out and investigate down there, because that was actually where the British fleet, I don't know the name of it, choked off the bay at the little estuary part and chased the ragtag naval fleet of the United States up into the northern parts of the bay. So I would just like to see what we could find there, possibly, if anything. And there's a spot that actually is a fishing pier now, where there was a British vessel that was wounded in that firefight, per se, and it took him about a month to repair the ship to get back in battle, into the Battle of 1812, or the War of 1812.
That would be so exciting. Are there a lot of ghost ships? Are there ghost ships seen in that area?
There's one in the bay that they seen. It's actually by a sunken naval freighter that's out there, and they use it as live target practice. But they have said they have seen at least one ghost ship out in the middle of the heart of the bay. But it's also really foggy at that part of the condition because you get the Atlantic mixed in right into the Chesapeake right there.
See, up in the Halifax area, when the city blew up in the 1800s, they have ghost ship sightings all across their bays. I'm not saying it's happening nightly, but it is happening frequently in that area, along with the Newfoundland, where a lot of ships got broken up by the rocks that were just under the water.
I would definitely like to see a ghost ship.
Yeah, me too. That would just be total pirate-like. Total pirate-like. Yeah. Tell us
the Black Pearl.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my goodness. October, I'm going to give you the final word here. Why don't you, in the last 45 seconds here, tell us where people can find your investigations, where they can get in touch with you in case somebody from Maryland is listening on in and wants you to come investigate?
We have the Double Saints Paranormal Society on Facebook, which is our page. You can also go to our email, which is the same, the Paranormal Research Society at gmail.com. We also, you can message one of us if you don't feel comfortable, or you can message us through our pages or personally if you just want to follow us. We haven't had internet for a month, so we haven't been able to load our videos and EVPs and stuff. So our page is like under construction, but we're working on it. As soon as I get internet, I can put it all up there. And we're also we also are listed on the paranormalsociety.com, where it lists the ones by area. We should be under Maryland.
Wonderful. Appreciate that. October Rainne, Cody Giffin, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio. Really appreciate you taking out the time, and good luck and stay safe in the field.
Thank you.
You too.
It was fun.
All right. Coming up next, we have Everett Thiemer and The Encounter.
This is the winter of our lives. We come to play the final scene. The curtains closing in the darkness we expose what lies beneath.
Every night at this time, we encounter The Encounter with Everett Thiemer as we take a look around the world at the news of the day. The news is always changing, and that's why we bring it to you at this time on Spaced Out Radio. Don't forget, for right now, you can find our news section on our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/SOR The Encounter. We're going to move it all over to our website very, very soon as we make some changes there. Everett Thiemer, our news director, is back. Everett, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I always like how you start off your microphone really, really blaring hot.
That has to be something in the connectivity or something. There's no reason for that.
See, now you're normal. It's a nightly debate. I actually laugh about it now. I really do. Nonetheless, some big news coming out of Nevada today, my friend.
There is. 3.5 months after Art Bell, the pioneering legend of the paranormal field, passed away, his autopsy report was released. And it turns out that his cause of death appears to be an accidental overdose of several dangerous, four prescription medications.
Wow.
He had in his system oxycodone, Valium, Soma. These are serious medications, and I think this highlights the danger that even, following doctor's orders and all of that, these medications can be very dangerous. And I think that this sort of highlights the fact that you have to be careful with this stuff. And it goes along with the opioid crisis that we're talking about. I mean, this appears to be something that didn't have to happen, but it's also very easy to forget what medication you took already, especially when you get to be older and you're taking many of them. I mean, I think everybody knows that he suffered a bit from back pain, and obviously he had COPD and some other health issues. But when you get to be on this many heavy duty medications, you have to be very careful with what you're doing.
I think there's a lot of questions still in regards to this. Like, I'm not a medical physician or anything like that. I'm not an expert. I'm not on any medication myself. But nonetheless, I mean, to have those highly prescribed, highly toxic prescriptions that he was on while combating COPD, I mean, that has to be a lethal combination, my friend.
I imagine it could be very dangerous. I mean, he had oxycodone and hydrocodone along with Soma and Valium are muscle relaxants, or, they're all depressants in the sense. Not like, go ahead.
Do we know if this was all prescribed to him? Has that come out yet?
That has not come out yet. It will be interesting to see. I don't want to speculate. I just think that this is a perfect example of, at this point, somebody not necessarily over-medicating themselves or anything like that, but possibly having a difficult time keeping track of what they've taken and trying to get rid of or alleviate particular pains and aches. It just looks like it was something that didn't have to happen.
That's awfully too bad, man. That is awfully too bad. And I mean, I think we're all fans of Art Bell, and anybody who says they have the answers to what is happening, I guess. Has there been a final police report on this filed yet?
As far as I've seen, the only thing that has been released as of right now is the autopsy report. It's safe to assume that with it being ruled an accident, that if it hasn't been closed already, it will be in the next day or two.
That's still sad. Still sad to have a legend like that pass the way he did. Really. I mean, there's just, April 13th. Friday the 13th. Yeah. I mean, it's just weird that was the day.
And there is a lot of speculation out there, and I'm not comfortable going down the road of the speculation yet, because there are so many people out there saying different things. And I think right now, whatever the situation is, I think it's best that we leave it as an accidental at this point and let the police and authorities do whatever it is that they're going to do. The thing where I see a problem or an issue is that if this stays as just an accidental death happening on Friday the 13th with the health problems that Art Bell had, this is going to go down as one of those topics that always gets speculated on. People will be talking about this in 20 years. And maybe that's a bit appropriate for Art Bell, because he was a bit of a showman. I think possibly he would have liked that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, if there is anything that anybody of his fans, and I think we're all fans of Art Bell, we wouldn't be listening to these shows or even broadcasting them if it wasn't for the legend. But if there is something that we could smile about, it's the fact that he chose to go out on a Friday the 13th.
Yeah, we can laugh about that a little bit, but I also think that this is it's a good time to take a look at the situation. I mean, it's been a good time to take a look at the prescription opioid and painkiller situation for a while. This definitely highlights the potential for a mishap in the situation, especially with somebody in a public, in the public's eye like this.
No kidding. Well, let's move on. Well, there has to be some other news of the day.
Oh, there's lots of news. There's always good news. Did you hear about the crown jewels of Sweden being stolen on Tuesday?
No. What happened there?
Well, apparently they were on display at a cathedral in Stockholm.
Right.
And some thieves made off with part of them, and their escape was like out of a movie. They first escaped on bicycles and then took off on a speedboat.
Have they been recovered?
They have not. In fact, they had helicopters, speedboats, police units out looking for them. They escaped out through a lake, and as of right now, they have not been recovered, and they're believing that they probably, at least in the near future, will not be recovered. They have a feeling that these thieves made their escape. Where they think they will be recovered is in the next few years when these jewels become almost impossible to sell.
That's ballsy. That's brazen. If there's a reason to use the word brazen on this show, this is that moment.
It is. I imagine I've read some reports that this was essentially like a scene out of a movie, with these thieves escaping first on some bicycles, riding a short distance through Stockholm from this cathedral to the port where there was a boat apparently waiting for them. They hopped on and took off.
This almost sounds like one of those heists that you saw, like on Ocean's 11, where they're ripping off the casinos, or back in the day when they would rip off art galleries.
Definitely. It is definitely something like that. You know, the thing is, first of all, they're not even putting a value on what was stolen. They're essentially, saying that they are priceless to the land of Sweden. But where it gets difficult is these things are so hard to sell. There is such a limited market for these things, and the crown jewels of any country are beyond the affordability of 99.999% of the population. So you have such a limited audience to buy them, or potential people to buy them, that hopefully they will at some point turn up.
Wow. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible, my friend.
You don't hear much about jewel heists that take place anymore, but it's definitely kind of cool. It's definitely a little fascinating, and it's not the first one. Or, in recent times, there were several in 2009, 2006. So this isn't unprecedented in this day and age yet.
Either way, that's brazen. I mean, you have to have a team, a solid team behind you in order to make that happen.
You know what, though? It almost doesn't look like they did. I mean, if you think about it, if they're not going into details how they got them in the cathedral. But once they got them, if they took off, it's only a short distance from this cathedral to the harbor. So if they had the boat there waiting, once they got out of that cathedral, I think the hardest part is having the bikes in place and having the boat in place and hoping the boat starts.
Wow. Good for them. Good for them. Do we cheer for them because they got away with it?
You can't cheer for them. They
Why
stole
not?
crown jewel because they stole crown jewels of Sweden.
I know that, but the what's the word I'm looking for? I don't even know what word I'm looking for. It's impressive, though, man. Like, how did they get through all of that security? This is what I want to know.
Are you going to cheer for me if I come up there and steal some of Canada's maple syrup?
Well, have as much as you want. We don't mind. We share everything.
I can understand how you would want to cheer them, but come on. It's historical artifacts. It's
I get that. I get that. And I do hope they get caught. I do hope they get caught. But, I mean, just the fact that they had the gumption to pull this off successfully, that's impressive. It is impressive.
Well, what happens? Let's say they get caught. They do their time. How long until these thieves are security consultants for somebody or something along those lines? There have been so many hackers that have been caught that then go on to work for various companies developing security systems and firewalls and things like that. These guys could one day be the ones in charge of developing security for things like crown jewels or other historical artifacts.
Well, very interesting, my friend. Let's move on to another story here.
Amazon has their new facial recognition software,
right,
that has been released, and the ACLU did a test where 28 lawmakers in the U.S. from the House and Senate were identified as criminals. They were misidentified. The facial recognition identified them as somebody else and labeled them as criminals. So this facial recognition software is not nearly as accurate as Amazon is claiming it is, and they've since released a statement saying that when the test was performed, the ACLU should have set the threshold for acceptability and recognition at a higher rate than the default rate. But what the ACLU is saying is that nowhere in the software, nowhere in any of the literature or guidance of the software does it give any guidelines as to what this ratio or this acceptance rate should be set at. And their concern is that if this becomes a standard norm for police and law enforcement departments, that it's going to lead to essentially tons of lives disrupted based on not just a false identification, but a false identification by a machine.
That could lead to a lot of issues. And the more we play with this technology, and trust me, I mean, I'm in a studio filled with technology. I like technology, and buttons are fun to press, right? But the more we start getting into this technology with facial recognition and everything like that, I mean, how many lawsuits in the future are going to be up for this with false claims and false accusations because a machine told you so?
Well, here in Illinois, I think they've kind of set the precedent, because in Chicago, they use the red light cameras quite liberally. They're all over the place. And several people have sued saying that you can't face your accuser. If you get a ticket by a police officer, he can testify against you. A photo or a machine cannot testify against you. And many of these pictures are blurry, not very clear. It's tough to describe exactly what's going on. And the courts ruled that it was valid testimony. It was valid evidence. So I think that as we go along, we're going to have to follow almost, at least in the beginning, every individual case to see what the trend is. But as of right now, a lot of jurisdictions are allowing for, what would you call it? Technological identification.
It's still too far out there for me. It really is. I think there's a difference between security and hypersecurity. And I think this is just, I don't think the technology is there to make it 100% yet. And I think we got to worry about that. I really do.
I think this could be useful in the terms of, let's say you use it and you have a photograph of this person. If a pool can be created of possibly known offenders, known past offenders, where you can kind of narrow down the suspects. But I don't think the idea of this facial recognition software saying, oh, it was this person, and then you develop a case against that person is sort of a valid argument or way to go yet.
I like Marty's comment on Twitter. If the facial recognition software claims congressmen are criminals, I would say it worked perfectly.
I think a lot of people would agree with him.
All right, we got time for one more.
We were going to deal with some breaking news earlier. There was a report of a serial farter.
What?
In a serial farter in New York City's west,
like flatulence.
Like flatulence.
Oh,
there was a lot of speculation on whether or not this was just a practical joke, whether or not it was a social experiment, because people were experiencing this person walking by and these obvious noises were coming from them. But it was obvious that it was not the person, it was some sort of mechanical device or machine or recording, that kind of thing. Well, after this report ran, the person was identified and found. And in fact, he has an Instagram account about this. This gentleman's name is Phil Bauscher. And of course, he's a 35-year-old musician from New York who spends his free time walking around about 5 days a week around New York doing this, just randomly making these noises out in public just to get the response from people.
That's hilarious.
Leave it to a middle-aged musician to have too much time on his hands.
Or elsewhere.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. Let's get to the thought of the day, shall we?
Excellent.
Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where during the day we put a question on our Facebook and Twitter page. And then, because we love the audience participation and love bringing you into the show, we read your responses on the air. So today's Thought of the Dave is, tell us about your most haunted experience. We'll start off with Serena here on Facebook. She says, right now, my most haunting, as in the one I'm still feeling, was when I communicated 2 nights ago with the female orca who just lost her calf. She'd been carrying it for over a week now. She was screaming her pain and rage at humanity, knowing it's our actions that caused her calf's death. She also knows humans are watching, so she is showing the world the consequences of our actions. That's a little bit surreal right there, man. A little bit surreal. How do you channel, and I'm not saying this to be negative to Serena or anything, how do you channel a whale?
I have no idea.
Me either. Let's go to Kat. I would have been practicing lucid dreaming for quite some time, and then I started to gain what seemed like responsibility while in this state. Certain things would return, and houses were steeped in the darkness. I was over at a friend's, and there was a house just on the corner across from him. It was this house that I would visit more than once. During the lucid dream, I was brought to this house again, and I decided to enter. Darkness crept about me like it was the soul of the dwelling. Let me see here. Then I saw it. A stairwell going down to the basement. The basement was a concrete floor, and in the corner was a mattress with a couch at the base of the stairs. While I was walking around trying to see what I could, I walked to the mattress, and it was covered in bugs, lice, and maggots. I took a step back, turned around, and I was shoved by a black shadow onto the mattress, landing back first. All the lice and maggots and the other nasty, foul mattress, black. I snapped to fully awake, still freaking out about the insects, frantically trying to get them off. To this day, I will remember this lucid dream. It was like being shoved onto your phobias. Ew.
I wish I could lucid dream.
Not like that, man. That's terrible.
Oh, no.
It's terrible.
Not like that.
All right. Marilyn, we just moved into this awesome old house in Van Nuys, California. And the first night I was hearing someone walking down the stairs, it was hard to see anyone. I, put a picture on the stairs, everyone. All right, let me see here. Oh, she put a picture of the stairs up in this post, okay? I read these cold, so you have to forgive me. And so I started to walk down the stairs. Who was this? Who did this? I lost my place because some people don't write with periods. There's not a single period in this post, so bear with me. Started to walk down to see if she was okay, and the footsteps stopped and started coming up the stairs. And I said, "Mom, is that you?" And they started coming up faster. So I ran into the room, got in my bed, covered my head, and it got so cold, and I could hear a lady crying, laughing, yelling, screaming them. It was not so cold anymore, and I stopped. I got so sick the next day. So much things happened in this house. Wow. Freaky. Absolutely freaky. Let's get to another one. Daryl. While in the Army, I was taking a nap and woke up with the feeling that behind me was an endless pit. And then I heard this creature-like growl. I was paralyzed, couldn't move. Yet I could see my roommate moving about in the room. I tried to yell at him but could not talk. Since I was laying at the edge of the bed, started twisting my muscles till I fell off the bed. It was the most haunting experience of my life. Very, very strange, man.
Creepy.
Totally creepy, right? I never get those real freaky dreams like that. Never get them.
I've had a few, but not many.
I don't really remember mine. I'm glad I don't. I'm really glad I don't. Really glad.
Maybe you don't know what you're missing, though. What if you're dreaming of bacon?
That'd be heavenly. Heavenly. On Twitter, Tamara. I literally experienced it all and too numerous for Twitter, but being pushed down the stairs with a baby in my arms hurt a lot. That would freak me out. Totally freak me out. Can you imagine being pushed down the stairs with like one of your children while they're still newborns? That's terrible.
That'd be horrifying.
That would be absolutely... It's almost criminal. It really is. It's almost criminal. Let's get to Facebook here. Sleepy Dave. I once had a medium tell me I had 9 spirits following me. They were all cases for the medical examiner I had picked up previously. She went on to describe every spirit in detail, and she was spot on 100%. The only medium I ever met who was correct about anything. Those spirits haunted the crap out of my apartment at that time. Weird.
I couldn't live like that.
That's where you need some serious grounding in order to, find that peace. You know what I'm saying? You need some serious grounding to make sure you're not carrying that stuff home. A lot of us in this field do not get into that. We just don't. I don't know why we don't, but we don't. Something that we should all take a little bit more seriously.
There's not many people who take this stuff seriously. They all think they know it all.
Oh, true enough. True enough. Just either way, it's a little freaky. Everett Themer, thanks for coming on and sharing the encounter with us. Let our audience know where they can find it.
Right now, they can find the encounter at facebook.com/SOR, the encounter online.
Wonderful. I want to say a big thank you to October Rainne and Cody Giffin for Ghosts of Maryland tonight and a great Bigfoot story. Great Bigfoot story. You can check out the archives at youtube.com/spaced out radio. Really appreciate you doing that. Tomorrow night on the program, we have author Douglas Robinson coming on in. We're going to be talking about werewolves, vampires, and more. Are they real? Have they ever been real? We'll find out tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thank you to everybody listening in at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. A big thank you to everyone listening in on Spreaker and in the chat room. Almost 1,000 comments tonight. You were fantastic. Thanks to everybody on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, including you, Marty. I should have restarted the show for you when you showed up late. I'm sorry. I didn't. Maybe next time. And to the Veterans Club, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, thank you so much for sharing the show. Thanks for telling your friends and doing your part to make us bigger and better every single night. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good night.
Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching.